Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today I want to talk about books that I would recommend to everyone. Pretty much if like somebody would like ask me like, I want to get back into reading, or like I want to read like an impactful book, like not just pure entertainment, but like something that actually will stick with me. What book would you recommend? That is pretty much this video. There are quite a few like different books. I picked 5 that I personally think everybody should read. Obviously only if you're interested in it, but in my personal opinion, these are kind of really impactful books, at least for me, and I think everybody should give them a try at least. Let's get right into it with the first one, which in my opinion, the first one you should read is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I know there's a movie, but hear me out. The book is so much different than the movie. I don't even feel like they are comparable at all. I like the movie, I enjoyed watching it, but I feel like the book just gives you a whole different story, with just the bare bones being the similar thing, The book focuses much more on the mindset of our main character, Robert. And the book is just a really, really good display of how people would react probably. He isn't, your straightforward hero who goes and finds a cure or anything like that. No, he's just a human who is actually on the brink of going insane because of his situation. And I think the book is so brilliant when it comes to that. His problem with alcohol and his behavior towards the vampires, zombies, whatever you want to call them. I know they are called vampires, but they remind me a lot more of like a vampire zombie mixture kind of. But yeah, I feel like if you like the movie, be prepared that the book is quite different, but I would read it for the main character and how he behaves and how he carries himself and kind of the interesting human psychology that is behind the behavior of the character, that you just don't get with a movie. And yeah, the dog is also in the book. I'm just gonna have to warn you, the dog is also in the book. It is sad. It is really, really sad. But yeah, it's a brilliant story, and it is a really, really short story. So if you don't wanna commit to anything super, super big, the book is, I think, 150 pages or something like that. Yeah. So it is not something you're gonna have to read for a long, long time, So I think that is a bonus point for this. Then the second one is completely different. The second one is a nonfiction, which is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, the acclaimed guide to stress-related diseases and coping by Robert M. Sapolsky. This is one of the first nonfiction books I ever read when I started getting sick, a long time ago now. And this is such an informative book, especially with today's world and us being like pretty much permanently stressed. I don't know a lot of people who don't feel some kind of stress level throughout the day. And whilst I'm not the best with actually following through with the tips in this book, I think the book has given me such a good understanding of stress and what it does to my body and how to understand what is happening and stuff like that, that I do feel like I am dealing a lot better with stress now than I ever did before. And it's also good to know about the health side of stress-related diseases. So if I would recommend like one nonfiction book to somebody, I would go with this one actually, because I don't think there's somebody out there who can't profit from the book. I think everybody can profit from this book, and yeah. There's actually an explanation in here why zebras don't get ulcers, so you will get that information. But a lot more, you will just get really important information about coping with stress and what it does to us and how, why are we so stressed, even though nothing is happening, stuff like that. It is super, super interesting, and I think if you maybe aren't the biggest fan of nonfiction, give this one a try. Maybe if you feel like, in your life you could maybe profit from that. Get it even as an audiobook. I feel like nonfiction is brilliant for audiobooks. It's pretty much like listening to a lecture, so I love doing that, and yeah, I would recommend that to everyone. For me, it did help a lot. It didn't mean that I'm like brilliant at coping with stress, but I feel like I'm a lot better. You know, I've grown through reading nonfiction, and that one is one that really taught me, you know, if there's a topic you want to read something about, there's a book out there, most probably. You just need to make sure that the author actually knows what he's talking about. And yeah, he does. So it's a good first start if you want to get more into like, you know, maybe understanding yourself and your body. I think that one is a really good start. Then from there, we're switching to a really, really sad book, and that is A Monster Called by Patrick Ness. And this is inspired by, I'm gonna butcher the name. I'm not gonna pronounce it. I'm really sorry. It's an Irish name. And I know I knew how it's pronounced and I've forgotten again. But yeah, I'm gonna just put her name on the screen. I'm not gonna, I don't want to butcher it. Yeah, but yeah, he wrote the story because she isn't an author, a writer, and he was really inspired by the story, and he credits her, which is important. But yeah, this is a story about a young boy whose mother has cancer, and we get the story through his eyes, and the book is filled with grief, like really, really active grief for a living person. And I feel like the longer we live as humans, the more we get cancer. Like it's something that is pretty actively happening. Like a lot of people suffer from cancer, a lot of people die from cancer because we have eliminated so many other diseases. At least we had eliminated so many other diseases that cancer was pretty much one of those things that was left over. And this was so impactful about how people deal with grief when somebody's still living. And you know, it is a young boy, and he sees the monster in front of his window, and then he starts conversing with the monster and stuff like that, because the monster calls. And it's just such an impactful story for understanding emotions. But I love it. I think it's really important. It's maybe not necessarily like a children's book, but I think you can read this to younger children. Maybe, you know, it's also a really, really nice copy. You have like pictures everywhere in the book, so I think just the whole concept of the thing is really important. But yeah, I think the perspective on grief and dealing with cancer is just super important. There are probably other books out there who would give you the same feelings and stuff, but that is the one that I found and I fell in love with when I read it. I haven't read it since because it makes me sad, and I don't know if I want to be sad at the moment. But yeah, it is definitely also a candidate for rereading for me, because I think sometimes we have to actively read stories like that. I think sometimes we need that. So yeah, I think it's a really important book. Pivoting from that, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to do it. It by Stephen King. I think nobody can convince me that like there's a better King book out there. I just love this book. I think this is such a brilliant story. Even if you set the horror aside, which the horror is done brilliantly, like it's such a good horror. But I think what's much more impactful is the story of our main characters and the fact that we get this really, really long span. We get them as children, we get them as adults, we see how life has changed them and how fear has changed them, and just I think it's sometimes one of these like where life takes you kind of stories, you know, where maybe you think like when you're younger, you know, I'm gonna be like that, I'm gonna be like that, and then you know you end up somewhere totally else. Like you are a different person than you thought you would be. You are in a different place. You are in a different life, kind of, to what you think you would have been. And I think this book kind of falls into that. Obviously, it is a massive book. I would recommend doing it like I did. I read it over a month. I took the number of pages and divided it through days in the month, and then I just read strictly like this amount of book each and every day. And I think that made it like really, really good. And if you want like a really impactful horror, you will have to read this. It is just such a great metaphor for all of the horrors and the fears that you have, and the way the children are dealing with it is such a brilliant thing. Obviously, there's the one scene in here. I'm gonna quickly mention it. You don't have to read it. You do know that you can just skip a few pages if you have a problem with the scene. To be honest, I didn't like the scene. I don't think there's anybody out there who likes the scene. I do think it is a scene that in a weird kind of way makes sense in the book. I still didn't like it. So I would just think, if you're a little bit more sensitive to topics like that, skip the scene. It's not impactful for the story per se. It's just pretty much showing you how this whole influence works and the emotional toll it takes and kind of the consequences of that. In my opinion, it does kind of mirror what is happening in like a really grotesque way, but was it necessarily important for the book? No. So just skip the scene. But other than that, it's just, I don't know. I love the characters in this book. I love the way the horror is portrayed. I think that is one thing Stephen King is just incredibly good at, to convey different kinds of horrors and to like really tailor them to the characters, the horror that's happening. And you have the horror that comes from it, then you have like the everyday horror that just comes from living your life. The impactfulness of other people onto the horror that it conveys itself. Just like all the interactions between all the different parts of the story, I feel like are just brilliantly done in this book. And so yeah, I would say if you haven't read it yet, go and read it. I haven't watched the movies actually. I'm a total scaredy cat. I don't hate horror movies. I like horror movies. I'm not good at watching them. I think that's the better explanation. I'm just not good at watching horror movies. At some point in my life, I will go ahead and watch it, but I haven't gotten the courage yet to do it because I know that I will be horribly afraid at the end of it. And now we're coming to the last book. I think that is more or less the only book that I haven't given 5 stars from all of these books, but it's just such a cool experience reading this, and that is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. The edition I have is the remastered full color edition. I don't know if it would be as impactful if you read other versions of this, but this is pretty much a story in a story. Our main character reads a manuscript that he finds, and he writes his ideas and thoughts into the pages and everything. And so what you get with that is, you start with pretty much just your standard written book, the story of how his life is going, stuff like that. And then the longer time goes on and the crazier our main character gets, the weirder the pages get. So we have, for example, then pages like these where you have different fonts which show you the different texts. Like one text is the text that he reads in the story, and then one text is the text his story. And then from there on out, we get, for example, to pages like these, where obviously the layout is just like totally weird, and you have to kind of find out where you have to continue reading. And there's just a lot of names listed, footnotes, and pieces of text that you just can read through. And then we continue and we get to pages like these, where you have just a few sentences on a page. And all of this is just conveying the story of kind of getting crazy or going crazy, like losing your mind because of this like manuscript kind of thing. And kind of the way to find out what is happening, like what is up with this manuscript, what is up with the story, the losing oneself kind of to a story. It's really hard to explain. I feel like you just have to read it, but obviously I understand that it's hard to like go off of that. And I personally love books in this format. This isn't the only one I've read in a format like this, but this one was a pretty crazy story. I think you don't have to necessarily read it for the story, even though the story is pretty crazy and interesting and it leaves you with a lot of like, what the fucks. But there are other books out there that are similar in like the style of how the story is being told. One example is the Illuminae Files, which is like a YA fantasy series. So you know, that is also really interesting to read. I think this one is like one of those special books that maybe you will only ever read once in your life. But that kind of like every now and then you just think about it and how the book told you the story. That really left an impact on me. Even though I didn't love the story, I think the way the story is told is something that I will just never forget and that everybody should experience at least once. Just to see that there's more out there than just your basic story written in one, which is totally fine. I love those books. That is what I read the majority of the time. But I think every now and then you need a book that just does it in a different way. There's one more out there, I think by George R. R. Martin, but I'm not quite sure, that is also in this style done, and it has a ship on the front. So there's like, that's it's supposed to be really, really similar to this one. So I might just go ahead and pick that up at one point, just because I find it so interesting. But yeah, I think this is like a brilliant example of those kind of books and how you can do reading a little bit differently. And I don't know, maybe get a little bit of a push to get out there, out of your comfort zone. So yeah, those are the 5 books that if somebody asked me what I think they should read, I would go with these ones. Even ignoring all genres and what you normally read and what, you know, your typical enjoyable reading is, I would actually say no matter what genres you like to read, these ones are all good ideas and are all great stories told in a super interesting and great way, and all of them are incredibly impactful, and so I would recommend them to everybody. I understand that not everybody will be interested, but I think whether or not you think you're interested, you should at least try one of these books. If you have other books that you think belong in this list, please leave them down below. I would love more recommendations that you are saying, you know, everybody really has to read that, and maybe like put your reason for that down there as well, just so you, like, we all know why we should read them. But yeah, I really love like a bigger list of books that we all think should actually be out there and be read by as many people as possible to make an impact on their lives. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!